What's good, everyone? OJ here. Welcome back to another video. Today, we're going to be talking about all things Monolith Soft and what's going to be going down in 2021 for the studio. I think Monolith Soft is primed to have an amazing game that they're going to be showing off, maybe even this year at the Game Awards. But recently, I talked to you guys about Monolith Soft in a live stream, and a lot of you had many different things to say, a lot of great insight on what you think Monolith Soft could be working on, and that inspired me to make a separate video as well, discussing things with people who did miss out on that. Now, first, I want to go over a couple different things with Monolith Soft, get some misconceptions out of the way for people that are new or just people who just don't understand when it comes to how Monolith Soft is broken down. Now, Monolith Soft has multiple different studios within there, and they are a subsidiary of Nintendo. That means Nintendo wholly owns them, so they can employ them to work on other things like The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2, for example, or even Animal Crossing New Horizons. Both of those games, Monolith Soft had a hand in. However, just because they're working on some of those games doesn't mean they don't have their hands in their own projects and developments. So, for example here, they've had multiple different studios work on multiple games at the same time. Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 Torn of the Golden Country all had overlap, in addition to everything that they were working with Nintendo on Breath of the Wild and some of the other games, Animal Crossing and everything like that. So they've got multiple studios, and they've had some big expansions since Nintendo took them over, especially in the past 3 years since Xenoblade Chronicles 2 took off. They've ballooned up over near, I think, 250 employees for the company, and they have a pretty good male to female ratio, or at least one of the better ones out there compared to other companies. So shout outs to Monolith Soft on that. But they're ever growing, they're ever expanding, and they're consistently working on new projects to delight and surprise us. Now, when they first announced Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition in 2019, I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. We should get this at some point, like it's going to be nice. But I do think that there's going to be a follow-up to that. And the follow-up in 2021, to me, has to be Xenoblade Chronicles X. Now, Nintendo has been very vigilant when it comes to bringing over all of the Wii U games that had success, and even those that don't have success on the Nintendo Switch. For example, Tokyo Mirage Sessions was an RPG that was brought over despite not really anybody asking for it, but they did it anyway. They're pretty much acting like the Wii U didn't exist at times, and that's completely fine by me, because there's still a few more games on the Wii U that needs to come over. But I'd probably say the biggest game that's left now that Pikmin 3 Deluxe launched recently on the Switch is Xenoblade Chronicles X. I think that game is a huge, expansive, open-ended game that Switch players would absolutely love, and many didn't get to play. That was also one of the weirdest games on the Wii U. It did things that no other Wii U games did. So, for example, you can actually download data packs in order for it to load faster. So that was something that was very interesting and unique to that game that wasn't for other Wii U games. Now, we heard about how hard it was to develop open world games on the Wii U because of the RAM and limitations and memory and stuff like that. But with the Switch, if you're bringing that game over, yes, they already talked about how it would be a lot more difficult and an expensive port, but I think that Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition gave them a lot of confidence and also money flowing in to fund a project like Xenoblade Chronicles X. Now, I don't think that they would have thought that it would be, okay, now that Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition is out, now we're going to use that money and then fund it. I think that they're probably thinking and looking at pre-orders and looking at sales and saying, okay, now this is a go when it comes down to it, because the game did do really well, over 1.32 million in like a month or so, and we haven't gotten updated numbers since the game launched. So I'm guessing that Monolith Soft is very confident, and also Nintendo at saying, okay, maybe we can fund a Xenoblade Chronicles X on the Nintendo Switch. You also have to look at it this way. Pretty much every single Xenoblade game can be played on the Switch, with the exception of Xenoblade Chronicles X. You have 2, you have Torna, you also have Definitive Edition. You might as well round things out and get Xenoblade Chronicles X on the Switch as well. But that leads me to something else. What's going to be next for them? What are we going to see? Well, I think that we could finally see that fantasy project that they've been teasing for quite some time now, right? They've been making a lot of hires it looks like it's going to be more of a traditional and fantasy type of game, which many of you guys talked to me about based on the drawings that they did show. Now, projects can always go in various different types of ways, and we don't know if they decided to keep that, scrap it, turn it into something else, make it fantasy in one part, then evolve it into something that's more futuristic at the next part. Maybe you play in one part where it's not, then the other part where it is. So we're going to have to wait and see. But I would bet anything that in 2021, we finally get the release of that new IP. Now, there's two separate things that I want to discuss here with Xenoblade and the new IP and what people are talking about it. Now, with Xenoblade, you can have the Xeno moniker, right? The Xeno name, and it necessarily be something new. So, for example, you have Xenogears, right? And then you have Xeno Saga. Those are looked at as different, but at the same time, same developers who made them, or Xenoblade and also Xeno Saga. So this could be a Xeno something to where it's still the Xeno franchise or the Xeno style of games, which aren't always the same, by the way. That just means alien or foreign type of stuff that's happening within the world. But it's like a Xeno something else, Xeno staff, Xeno sword, Xeno something else, and it's a completely different setting. You don't see what you're typically used to with Xenoblade 1, Xenoblade 2, how they look and everything. So they could just have something like that, which would essentially make it like a new IP, but still have some of those tie-back and connections to the Xeno universe, right? So I think that there's so many different ways that they can take this in order to just delight and surprise people out there. Now, when could we see the reveal of this? Once again, 2021, I think, is the lockdown target year to when Nintendo is really going to show off more of the game. But this is the wild card, which I did talk about before, the Game Awards. The Game Awards is a place that Nintendo always has at least one pretty big reveal, and RPGs have been having a pretty good run at the Game Awards. Even stuff like Marvel Ultimate Alliance back then. We had Joker and Super Smash Bros. Be revealed there. We also had Bravely Default 2 revealed at the Game Awards. We had The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild stuff at the Game Awards. There's always been some crazy stuff there, dating all the way back to years. Heck, even, what was it, 2014, when Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild was the first like gameplay demo of Miyamoto and also of Anuma-san playing the game right there. So I do think that it's very possible, because of that Bravely Default announcement and some of the other stuff that's happened at the Game Awards, that we see the first footage of Monolith Soft's new IP or new game or new Xeno or something at the Game Awards. Heck, and maybe they even tie that in like a Bayonetta 1, Bayonetta 2, and Bayonetta 3 announcement to where they say, hey, we got Xenoblade Chronicles X. But then what's this? Maybe it's a Xenoblade Chronicles X2 or whatever's next from Monolith Soft. Now, I'm going to get into this last part here where I talk about my own personal thoughts on what I want to see. So, one, I would love to see Xenoblade Chronicles X. I think that's pretty apparent from what I've said here. But two, I'd also like to see Xenoblade Chronicles X2 if they can make that. But then three, right? So this is just pretty much a triple option, but more like a double option, because I think Xenoblade X is coming at some point. So let's leave off the port here. But what could we see from them, whether it's a new IP or it's a Xenoblade Chronicles X2? I would like either one. Obviously, if you've played Xenoblade Chronicles X, it leaves off at a somewhat of a cliffhanger, so getting a true sequel to that game would be dope alongside the first game. But even if they decided to go in a different direction and say, hey, we're making a new Xeno-style game, or we're making a new fantasy RPG, I would absolutely love that. So those are the two areas that I would love to see them going. I think a new IP would be good. Have a little bit of a clean break from the Xeno. They've been doing that for a number of years now, since 2010, right? Xeno. Just pretty much all Xeno games have been coming out since then. For the past 10 years, they've been working on their own titles. But I do think it's time for them to finally say, okay, let's get something different out to go alongside Xeno and their portfolio with what Monolith Soft can offer. So we'll see what they have. But even if it's a Xeno style game, but it's a completely different setting and different style, I'll take that as a new IP as well. But we'll see what they actually name it, though, when it comes down to it. Are they willing to do Xeno something else like they've done before in the past? Or will they call it something completely different and try to break off from that name? It's going to be very interesting, but either way, I'm down with it. Whether they want to go with a brand new Xenoblade game, Xenoblade 3, whether they want to go with X2 for example, or even something that's a clean break, bring it on. I am ready for Monolith Soft's titles on the Switch and whatever else Nintendo has plans for in 2021 with potentially new hardware, so we'll have to wait on that too. So what do you guys think about Monolith Soft and them setting up for a big 2021? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Check out the links in the description. We've got Twitter. Go and give us a follow on there. Stay up to date on all latest gaming news and information. Also, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and share this video if you can. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll catch you for the next one. Peace.